A lot of people would like to read more, but they get easily tired or bored when they sit down to read a book. And it is not because they're lazy, it's because they make very basic mistakes that make it much harder for them to read regularly. And honestly, if you're making the same mistakes, you're just shooting yourself in the foot. So in this video, I'm gonna give you 5 simple tips that you can start applying right now and that will make it effortless for you to read for hours. Let's dive right in. Tip number 1 is probably the most straightforward, but also the most important one. Read what you like. It is absolutely no surprise that you get bored and tired if you're reading stuff that you're not interested in. So many people make the mistakes that they feel like they should be reading certain books because it makes them look smart or because other people find them interesting, instead of actually figuring out what they want to read. When I was in university, I thought that I don't like reading, simply because the curriculum forced me to read so many books that I didn't like. But guess what? As soon as I graduated, I started buying and reading the books that I actually wanted to read, and since then I've been reading ferociously. So don't care what your parents, your teachers, your friends or people on YouTube tell you should read, but instead find your own niche, find your own interests, buy those books, and you will figure out that it will be much easier for you to read regularly. Tip number 2, how you can read for hours without getting bored or tired, is that you remove distractions. We live in times where distractions are not only more addictive than ever, but also more accessible than ever. Usually we have our phone in our pockets at all times, and on top of that, if we're at home, we have our laptops with YouTube, Netflix, Facebook, you name it. And no matter how good the book is that you're currently reading, it is very hard to compete with those kind of distractions. So what I tend to do is that I completely remove all those distractions from my reading environment. You can shut down your computer, put your smartphone in the other room, turn off notifications, whatever it takes to make it as hard as possible for you to pick up one of those devices. You need to make it clear to yourself that during reading time you won't allow yourself to be distracted. And maybe that sounds a bit strict, but let's be honest, if you didn't have a problem with your reading habit, you probably wouldn't be watching this video in the first place. So that is why it is crucially important that we make it as hard as possible for you to be distracted. At the same time though, we're gonna make it as easy as possible for you to keep reading. And that is tip number 3. Make the reading experience enjoyable. Now how you do that exactly is kind of up to you, but what has worked very well for me in the past is to read in places that I really like being at. For example, outdoors or lying in my hammock. When I'm at home, I like to make a small snack or maybe a good cup of coffee that I enjoy together with my book. And by doing that, I'm able to over time train my brain into associating reading with an enjoyable experience. So try to think about what is enjoyable to you and then try to link that to your reading habit. Tip number 4 to read without getting bored or tired is to break down your reading into smaller steps. If you sit down on your couch with the intent of reading for 3 hours, then it is no wonder that you quickly give up. Quite frankly, there's almost nothing that we like to do for 3 hours straight, so what you instead have to do is think in small steps. Start with trying to read just 1 page. Now anyone can do that, and then you just go and take it a step further by trying to finish the chapter. Once you have finished the chapter, you might check how long the next chapter is and realize that it's actually not that long. So why don't you read that one as well? Keep in mind that at this point you are reading something that you genuinely enjoy, you have removed distractions from your environment, you have made the reading experience as enjoyable as possible, so why wouldn't you continue reading? If you then manage to take it one little step at a time, you will be able to read for hours non-stop in no time. And tip number 5 is that you simply need training for reading that long. Reading is just like any other habit. It takes time and practice to become good at it. If you were overweight and you hadn't trained for 20 years, you wouldn't be harsh on yourself for not being able to complete a marathon, would you? This is exactly how I want you to think of your brain right now. It is just utterly out of shape. And if you want to change that, you have to train, but you also have to accept that it takes some time to become better. So it is totally fine to start with just reading for 10 minutes before you go to bed. Then a week later you realize if you go to bed a bit earlier, you can actually read for 20 minutes. Maybe you start reading while you're commuting to work and you realize that you can get in another 20 minutes there. And over time you will be able to get your brain to read for hours focused and uninterrupted, but just be aware that this is a long process. So I recommend that you see daily reading as sort of your mental exercise routine. If you want, you can let me know which book you are currently reading in the comments below. I'm always curious to learn more about the reading habits of other people. And if you're interested in getting more videos about personal development and also reading, then make sure to subscribe for future content. I will see you in the next video.